I'm Minouche Shafik, and I'm honored to be the next president of Columbia University.
Many months later.
We're following some breaking news here tonight. Columbia University President Minouche Shafik has resigned, the university confirms. Her resignation comes after backlash over her handling of protests on campus over the Israel-Hamas war and allegations of anti-Semitism on campus.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and a lot of you probably forgot all the insane protests from super rich woke students at like Harvard and Columbia and all these places where the presidents would go and testify in front of Congress and say that they would not disavow the wild language being espoused by by their students and the obvious one way protests that were going on their campuses. Now, of course, these students are 100% fine to have their protests and have their words heard, but that's not what was happening. They were LARPing as revolutionaries, and most of the presidents of these universities, they were frauds. The Harvard president who resigned after a massive plagiarism controversy amid letting her students destroy property and LARP as revolutionaries and go after, all sorts of other students. That was Claudine Gay. Well, now Columbia, the other school that is full of woke weirdos who all pay $100,000 a year to go there, now their president has been fired. It was the effing aroundest of times, and it was the finding it outist of times. Let's start with Columbia. Embattled Columbia president Minouche Shafik, wow, as American as apple pie, resigns due to, quote, period of turmoil after anti-Israel student protests. Look, I think that you should absolutely allow your students to have freedom of speech. You should allow them to, have their voices be heard. All of these things we agree on. Even if I I don't have a dog in this fight in terms of Israel versus Palestine. Innocent civilians, obviously, I would hope the best for, but I don't pick a side because I'm America first, and neither one of these nations are America, shockingly. But all these woke university professors refused to say, hey, look, these kids breaking into buildings and holding people hostage and damaging property, that's all fine, because they all secretly agreed with them. Many of the university staff were coordinating with them. Now, embattled Columbia University president suddenly resigned. She was fired Wednesday and is escaping back to her home country after leading the elite institution for less than a year that was marked by constant and sometimes destructive anti-Israel protests. Shafik announced that she would be, quote, stepping down from the Ivy League in a letter to the student body and blamed the period of turmoil. I don't think that it was the, quote, period of turmoil. I'm pretty sure it was her terrible leadership and her endorsement of the students' riotous behavior. All you had to do was say, hey, you can't be breaking into buildings. That's not okay. But this clown agreed with their behavior. And that's why let's be clear, they got fired. You fired. They got fired. They didn't resign. Now it says, the period has taken a considerable toll on my family, as it has in others in our community, Shafik wrote. Maybe hire Americans to run American universities, by the way. Just a thought. Just a thought. Over the summer, I've been able to reflect and have decided that my moving on at this point will be best to enable Columbia to traverse challenges ahead. You know why? It's because fall classes are starting again, and they're already protesting again. That's the truth. They already started protesting again. And they said, you better get these brats under control. They can go protest on other property. By the way, I'm sure Columbia gets millions of dollars in federal funding every year. So that's your tax dollars going there. And we don't like it. And she probably said, no, I'm not going to stop them. I'm making this announcement so that now new leadership can be in place before the new term begins. In a letter, the scholar revealed that she is leaving the prestigious school to return to the UK, where she spent most of her career, for a gig with its foreign secretary as chair tasked with reviewing the government's approach to international development. I have tried to navigate a path that upholds academic principles and treats everyone with fairness and compassion. No, she did not do that. She never at any point did that. It's been distressing for the community and for me as president on a personal level to find myself, colleagues, and students in the subject of bad behavior. You mean your students were doing it? Dr. Katrina Armstrong, the CEO of Columbia University Irving Medical Center, will be stepping in. Oh, another woman. Awesome. As interim president, the school announced. In her own letter to the student body, Armstrong accepted the job with a slight nod to the year-long debacle that splashed Columbia across national headlines. As I step in this role, I am acutely aware that the trials the university faced over the past year, we should neither understate their significance nor allow them to define who we are and what we will become. The community, however, is not convinced the change in leadership will have any effect in stopping the last year's chaos from trickling into the fall semester. University leadership has been promising that combating anti-Semitism is a priority, but many students are already arriving in just a few weeks, and I have zero confidence that the campus situation this fall is going to look any different than it did in spring. Matthew Waxman, a law professor and member of the school's task force on anti-Semitism, Waxman was shocked by the resignation and said it was too soon to tell whether or not it was the right move for the school. The bigger question is, he continued, whether or not Columbia was going to crack down on the new rules aimed at mitigating anti-Semitism. We're going to have a big test in a few weeks. Well, what I can tell you is it's not going to. And by the way, they're welcome. These people are welcome to protest, on behalf of Palestine, or even against Israel's military action. That's not anti-Semitism, okay? What I worry about is, all the students who are there paying $80,000 a year and all the millions of our tax dollars that are pouring into these schools, and they're just letting these kids screw around and destroy property, Poison ivy. Shafik had been facing mounting calls for resignation for months over handling the protests, which broke out following last October's attack. She was accused of, quote, gross negligence while testifying before Congress after refusing to say whether or not the phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" should be considered anti-Semitic. Critics claimed Shafik was not sufficiently cracking down on campus protests until the tent encampments took over the entire Ivy League school lawn in the weeks leading up to the graduation. What we also found was many of those students who were in these encampments weren't even going to that school. They were outside agitators. Remember the students that were like, we need basic humanitarian aid, when they have full access to the school's cafeteria and free food and drink? That's how dumb these kids are. You're 100% welcome to protest, but you're not allowed to impede other students' abilities to take advantage of the education that they're paying for. Hundreds of students were arrested on trespassing charges for refusing to pack up when the demonstrations escalated, when a destructive mob illegally took over Hamilton Hall academic building. Again, that is not protesting. You're allowed to have your signs. You're allowed to be in public areas, which many of these areas were not public, but you are not allowed to break into buildings. You're not allowed to hold janitors hostage. You're not allowed to damage property. You're not allowed to do any of those things, okay? So these kids who are all covering their faces with their brand new towels, okay, this guy doesn't really look like a student to me, does he? Doesn't really look like a lot of students. And don't they have homework? Susan Chang Kim, another American's apple pie person, and Christian Krom messaged vomit emojis and accused Jewish students of, quote, asserting privilege during a panel discussion the month prior about anti-Semitic. Just tell the kids to go to class. It's really not that hard. Remember Claudine Gay, also another woke ideologue? Turned out she was a total fraud. Maybe they just need to find some boring white bread old white guy to take over these universities. I'm just saying, it seems like they keep hiring these diverse women of color who don't need no man, and they all end spectacularly badly. This is, again, Harvard president announced Tuesday she's stepping down just 6 months into her presidency. So both of these women presidents of the university didn't even last a year. Both of them. It's with a heavy heart but deep love I step down. The timing indicates that she was already planning to resign before new plagiarism allegations emerged that were first reported by the Washington Free Beacon. The former president acknowledged the short length of her tenure, allowing, while my brief presidency is remembered, I hope it will be seen as a moment of reawakening. No, everyone will remember you as a laughingstock who wasn't interested in protecting your own student safety or, well, giving credit to the people that you so willingly plagiarized their work of to get to your position. You were the Webster's Dictionary defines diversity, equity, and inclusion higher in the biggest definition of DEI debacle in history, followed second only by the Colombia president, who resigned in after just 6 months. Resigns, flees the country, goes back to the UK where they tolerate this kind of crap more willingly. Not to say that America hasn't allowed this stuff to go way too far. Anyway, again, they're allowed to protest, okay? Even if you want to make fun of them for LARPing as Terrys, or just, many of them being outright anti-Semitic, okay? You can have those opinions, but they're allowed to have their protests. That's what the First Amendment's for. But that's not what the criticism was. They were letting them occupy and take over buildings and hold hostages and damage property and all this stuff. All these rich, entitled brats, by the way. So they're gone. That's the second woke university Ivy League president gone in the last several months. Good riddance. I can't imagine paying for the educations from these schools, and I certainly can't imagine hiring anybody who went there. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.